Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of She Speaks Bravo with Emily Hanks. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. He's Instagram's sexiest man alive. We are joined by Jamie Stein of the podcast Deep Dive with Jamie Stein. He's also got his own very thriving business. He's an empath and intuitive, and he uses his powers for Bravo sometimes. And as we were gearing up to go into Beverly Hills, I said, you know what? I'm going to need to utilize this mind of his because Rinna, per usual, as the season is revving up, she starts to go into full PR mode. And she was like going off and doing all of her social media things and posting cryptic things in her stories and a lot of stuff with Kathy Hilton. And, oh, we're back to cease and desists. And, oh, I'm going to talk about it and doing all of her typical stuff. And I said, Jamie, help me out with Rinna, please. And boy, oh boy, we've gotten, she's really given us a lot to work with. Would you say? So please welcome to the pod, Jamie Stein.
Yay. Hello.
Yay.
Hello. No, that was supposed to be that in my heart. That was an enthusiastic yay. I'm not someone who says yay. So I don't know why I even tried to look. I'm trying something new. I was trying on unbridled enthusi and it's not my strong suit. But I am happy. It was an
off-brand. It was an off-brand yay. You gave it a try. It's just, that reminded me of, I went to an audition one time when I was still acting, and it was for a commercial, and the direction was, we need you to be really upbeat, super happy, and really excited. And I literally said, ooh, I can give you dry and sarcastic. I didn't get it.
You're pretty up. I think of you as not upbeat in terms of like Pollyanna upbeat, but you're high energy. I experience you as high energy.
Oh, I wonder how I take that. Do I like that? Okay, I'll take it.
I'll say this, your podcast persona is high energy.
God damn it. I'm really going for dry. I'm really going for dry.
You are dry too, but you're high energy in your dryness.
Okay. All right. This is good to know. You don't know how you're received by other people. But okay, I guess I could take that. That makes sense comparatively to a lot of other people. Yeah.
This is one man's opinion.
And I will take it and run with it, Jamie. That is my nature. All right.
All right.
So yeah. Let me just kind of do how did we get here with Rinna? And then I'll like throw it over to you because Sutton really gave Rinna gold when she went on Watch What Happens Live and said the whole bit about the Elton John charity, because Rinna loves a very surface level petty storyline that she can beat to death for a whole season. So she was like, yes, I can just ride this out for however long I can milk it. So when when Sutton was like going to apologize to Rinna at Harry's birthday, Rinna was like, oh, she was like milking it. She was giving her the long stare. And she was like, how could you, Sutton? This is a charity. This is a charity that I didn't pay for. Okay. This is a charity that I didn't spend $1 on. And I mooched off IMDb and got another seat at their table. And I didn't even end up sitting there. I sat at your table. But now I'm going to say that you didn't even pay for a table. But then when Diana started to go, this is really classless, you guys, let's not go there. She's like, yeah. How could you even want to bring this up at all? I mean, this is tacky. And then still wanting to beat it to death. But then when Garcelle was like, I'm leaving, guys, like, this is just getting nasty. Like, let's just drop it. She's like, I mean, no, I want to drop it. I don't even want to make this a thing, you guys. And Erika was like, what? No, you were wanting to like take this forever. So there was that. Then we get this stunt, nothing short of a stunt with that guy, Patrick Sommers. And listeners, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to two Beverly Hills episodes ago, and I break it all down. And he, the mess that he made coming out and saying he was working for Kathy Hilton, signed an NDA. Now he's breaking the NDA and Lisa, the part that really killed me on the Lisa front was that she then posted to her stories claiming she doesn't know. I'm like, hey, Bravo sleuths, help me figure out who this guy is. Help me find out who this guy is. I need to, help me figure out who he is. And I think that was when you messaged me and said, just one sentence, I'm ready to talk about Rinna.
Dry.
It was such a talk about dry.
My dry DM.
It was such a powerful message because I knew it said so much. I knew exactly what you were talking about. So over to you.
Yeah, well, I can definitely speak to where that DM came from because it's interesting. When you started to speak about the Sutton, Elton John charity of it all, I first of all, I completely forgot about that conflict. That's how forgettable it was to me. And then I was thinking to myself, oh shit, Emily's going to ask me about this. I literally have nothing to say because truthfully, I got nothing off it, which tends to be what happens with me with Rinna. I feel like she's so disconnected from herself and she's so self-produced and she's so, to your point, or part of your point, she's so reactive in the moment. Like she just she's a great improviser. I feel like she's kind of got that in common with Tamra a little bit. They're women who, when you're right in front of them, they'll feed off your energy and they'll kind of go with what you're saying. So as I said, I tend to experience Rinna as very deeply disconnected from herself. So I don't tend to get a lot off her unless if I really wanted to sit down, let's say, and, consciously try to channel something. That said, so the whole Sutton charity thing, it just sort of flew by me like tumbleweed. Didn't care. This whole thing with Patrick Sommers, if that's how you pronounce his name,
yes.
Patrick. This was one of the first times where I started to actually feel something. And it was the moment where I guess it was the stage in the stunt where Patrick, I think, had come out saying that he did work for Kathy.
Yep.
And so then at that point, I think Rinna posted something with the phrase oopsie daisy towards Kathy, meaning like the secret's been spilled, you're called out. And when I saw the oopsie daisy, I really felt for the first time, not intellectually perceived, but I felt the flavor of vengeance in her. I just felt this is a woman who is out for blood. The true joy and pleasure that she gets out of vengeance. And, it brings to mind that moment when she's sitting there with Denise, that now, to use the overused term, kind of iconic moment of, oof, you're so angry. It's like she could be talking about herself. You're so angry. There's such a joy and pleasure in this vengeance. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm feeling this in my body. I mean, I knew this about her before, but I'm feeling it now. So let me kind of drop into this and track it and sort of get more of the flavor of this. And as I did, it really immediately registered to me as a feeling of I've been misunderstood. I've been mislabeled. I've been wrongly accused. Now I am so happy to bring, as I'm saying it now, it's like to bring you down with me. To bring you down with me. I'm out for blood. So then I started thinking about that. And I was like, well, it's interesting, right? Because I'm always thinking in terms of pattern. I think we recreate the same pattern, energetic patterns in our lives over and over to learn lessons. So, the simplest version of that is you get into the same type of relationship over and over, or you find yourself in the same job situation over and over until you learn the lesson, right? And so I'm always looking at pattern. And so suddenly I just started thinking about Rinna's trajectory on the show. And I'm thinking about kind of what to me was her defining season way back in Munchausen. So was that season 6? I think that was season 6, right? Where she got into trouble for...
Yeah.
And it was just interesting because when I thought about that, I was like, okay, so there was a situation where Rinna felt like she was in cahoots with Vanderpump and that she was sort of doing something with someone by her side. And then it became a situation where she ended up bearing the brunt of the punishment and was sort of left hung out to dry. And then you could see she was pissed about that and she had a reaction. And so then she tried to even speak up and say, wait a second, you've left me out here all on my own. I wasn't doing this by myself. This isn't fair. And then on top of that, no one really co-signed her, including the viewing audience. So first she got hung out to dry by Lisa Vanderpump, taking the heap of that blame with Yolanda. And then she kind of got hung out to dry even more in terms of the viewing audience. And when I looked at that, I was like, that's the exact flavor of what I feel in her. It's this energetic impression of, wait, we were in something together. It was supposed to be you and me. And now you've left me on the outside to take the brunt of this. It is not fucking fair. And I think on a deeper level, she's heartbroken about that, but she's pissed. And then she's out for blood to take them down and to prove something. And I think what's also interesting, this is the last thing I'll say about this, is then I started thinking about the next season when she got into trouble with Kim Richards. Mm-hmm. And again, it was the same sort of thing where at that initial, whatever that was at Kyle's house, barbecue or something, Kim was the one who started it. Kim was the one who went back to the scene of the crime in Denmark and claimed she didn't do anything wrong. Lisa's behavior was unprovoked, acting as if she didn't really say anything about Harry. And so Lisa
Thank you for narrating that correctly. Thank you.
Well, exactly. This is my point, right? So Lisa was responding to that. Now, look, did she take the high road? No. But again, it was that flavor of, much like with Lisa Vanderpump, you know what? I'm standing up for what's right. I'm giving it back to you. I'm calling you out on something. And it was another situation where the entire group then made it her fault. How dare you say that to Kim? How dare you act like that? Which again, then kind of triggered her, she's close to death shittiness, which again, she paid an even steeper price for. So I just keep looking at all these patterns where it's like Lisa's kind of standing there saying, wait a second. It wasn't just me. Why am I the one getting punished for all this? So this is to say, if I were working with Lisa, I'd be very curious about where this started in her life and early experiences of feeling like, wait, I think I'm in collusion with someone. I think there's something happening here where we've got each other's back or we're in this together somehow. And then in some way, the rug gets pulled out from under me. I'm left alone to answer for it, and it is not fair. And I think that's where this vindictive rage to take other people down. And this is the last thing I'll say. It's like you even feel, we don't even know what's happening with Kathy Hilton yet, but we saw it in the previews. It's, you're going to answer for this. Other people have to answer for what they do. It's not fair that I'm the only one who answers for it. So that's my big picture kind of energetic view of a lot of what I think is going on in Rinna's life.
Okay. I mean, first of all, I really need to go back and thank you, because when people talk about the Kim Rinna feud, they really omit any of Kim's fault in it. And it as much as Rinna takes it too far and is insensitive, Kim did a lot. Kim was a broken and is a broken person that needs a lot of love and nurturing, but she still did provoke quite a bit. And I almost can't rewatch season 5. And I love to rewatch Housewives, but season 5 comes on and like Kim and Brandy were so toxic in that season. And as much as I know Rinna loses her shit, I'm just still like, when people narrate this incorrectly, it drives me crazy. So thank you for accurately depicting that. So with this season, we get a glimpse. Was it refreshing for you to see Rinna? I mean, hold on. Let me rephrase that. Do you know what I'm about to say?
Yeah, I know what you're going to say. Yeah.
Okay, because I was going to say, is it refreshing to see her after her mom died? But that's not how I meant that. I meant that like she can't, that's an organic, grounded moment that has like real, true emotions in it. And we don't really get that from Rinna very often because she's so formulated for the show at this point. Did that feel real and authentic to you?
Yeah, I mean, she does seem in shock to me. I mean, it's 2 days out. So I think she even said that at the she said she felt in shock to me. And then she said something to the effect of, I haven't even started to really process this yet. And that's sort of what it felt like to me. But it's interesting because that was the second moment in recent history where I did get an actual what I would call an empathic feeling from her when I was watching her talk about her mother's death. The feeling I got off her was just how, it makes me a little sad, just how alone she feels now. And I my guess, based on what was coming through me, if I assume it to be true, is that there was some feeling in Rinna, like this woman, she was all I had. She was the only one I could really trust to be there for me, which I think is interesting information if true, because she is in this marriage that, she seems to really love him. There seems to be a lot of love and trust there, but that's really how it came through me, at least from an inner child perspective of like, this was I've got no one now. I'm completely alone. That felt very strong to me when I was watching the episode.
Okay. Now to take it to like the cast now. Okay. The alliance that she has with Erika, does this feel like a genuine friendship to you?
Well, this is where it gets tricky, because at what point does the friendship of convenience become a real friendship? You know what I mean? After all these years? Yeah, it's like, I think they're in it together, so who's to really define what a friendship is in a way? I mean, do I think that Rinna has gone to bat so hard for Erika in large part as a way to kind of stake her claim as a friend, to show people, hey, I am a good friend, I am loyal, this is what true friend, for all the feedback she gets about you'll sell anyone out, you sold Denise out, you sold Garcelle out. It's like, no, here I am. I'm planting my feet in this soil. Look at me. And, I think they have each other's back. And so in a way, it's probably mutually convenient for the show. But in that place, I think they're probably cultivating what feels like genuine care for each other, to each other. Right. I mean, I will say this. I think you and I talked about this. Did we talk about this? I don't know. But, not to go down the two T's in a pod road again, but there was that episode where the Fox Force 5 minus Dorit were in this unedited hour together, which I found fascinating to listen to. And I have to say, when I heard them unedited together, I did feel like, wow, this is a group of friends. They're actually friends. They felt like they had real friend chemistry and they genuinely liked each other. So that was interesting to me.
So here's where I run into a roadblock with that, because of Jamie Stein, by the way, is out here turning people onto two T's in a pod. They should hire him as their personal guerrilla marketer. So he convinced me to listen to it, and because I was like, no, I will not. I shall not support Teddy. But then I did, and I was like, okay, fine, you might have been right. So I listened to that episode on your rec, and it was interesting. But then here's where I hit a roadblock. Then we get this episode with Erika saying that the victims are lying and they're actually scamming us. And Rinna over next to her going, they can sue for anything. And I'm like, Rinna. And so then it's like, is this a friendship of evil? Like, are you guys just evil because you need to defend each other? And that's where I get hot. And I'm like, okay, so what is the arrangement? Are you guys in this friendship where this is like an unspoken agreement that you shall co-sign her horrible behavior? Do you see? That's where I run into I'm confused by this.
Well, look, I'm not saying that I in any way think their friendship is a model of what friendship should be. I'm not saying I envy their friendship. I'm just saying, when you ask me if they're really friends, I mean, maybe I need to ask you what you mean by that. I guess I just interpret that as, do they genuinely care about each other? Do they consider themselves friends? I think they do.
You're right. You're right.
But do they enable each other? Absolutely.
You're right.
But look, this also isn't new in the world of Housewives. I think a lot of Housewives define friendship as we have each other's back in front of the camera, at least at all costs, no matter what the F you're doing. That's not how I navigate friendship. It's not how I want my friends to navigate friendship with me, but the stakes are high on camera in front of an international audience.
That is so fair. All right, fine. Okay. I mentioned a little bit that I'd want to tap into Crystal.
Can I say one thing?
Of course. That's what
I just want to say, at the risk of I don't know if this is controversial or not, but I am loving Erika's chaotic energy this
I
season.
am too. I'm so happy you said that. I'm right there with you.
Oh my God. Her tagline's something about like, I've got nothing to lose. Wait, what's her tagline? I've got nothing to lose. And
I've got nothing to lose in something that makes me dangerous or something like that.
I want to amend it to totally insane, nothing to lose. And she's just like throwing it all out there. And what I love about it is sometimes she's actually somewhere in the voice of reason. And then other times she's totally insane. But truly, it's like, you know what it is? Before she used to say she gave zero fucks, but she actually did. And now it almost feels like she genuinely doesn't give zero fucks. And it's kind of fun to watch.
You took like my last recap. My friend Pia and I said the exact same thing. I'm like, we don't think she's a good person. We're not like disclaimer. We're not like she's great now. But we have to, from an entertainment standpoint, admit that this is fun to watch because she's chiming in. Like when she said, you want her to say you're not a racist. We were like, yep, that's what she wants. But because she's like, I don't care. I'll say it. Her combination of Lexapro and alcohol is really working for me.
Well, I did say way back when this news broke, I did put it out there, this question of, is Erika about to become the new Taylor Armstrong? In the sense of now she's kind of the down and out one who's unhinged and has nothing to lose. And in a certain way, I feel like we're watching her take up that mantle of she's just the firecracker in the group who you don't really know what you're going to get from her. And I'm kind of, especially in a group like this, which does have a lot of self-produced flavor to it, to have this kind of unpredictable, like firecracker in the mix I'm always looking to Erika. I'm waiting to see what does Erika have to say in the situation.
Because mind you, in the very next breath, she's like, oh, like you assassinated my character, Sutton. And you're like, no, Erika. Okay, no, not the same thing. I agree.
Yeah, it's all a part of it. You just have to roll with the unpredictable waters. You don't know what you're going to get.
And it's good that Garcelle is willing to be like, no, Erika, that's not the same thing. Because the rest of the cast will just get scared and not say anything. So at least Garcelle is able to actually, in the scene, be like, no, not happening. Because it would be frustrating if it was just silence like the rest of them. In the case of Crystal, so my view on Crystal is I get popular mean girl energy off of her. That's just how I experience it. But I get a lot of feedback that she's just I'm misunderstanding her. Now, in the case of this dark, damaging, she's alluding to even more things that we didn't see. Like when she went on Watch What Happens Live, she's like, the conversation you guys showed is actually not so dark and damaging. There was more to the conversation, but Sutton and I talked about it. I forgave her. It's like, so what else is it? What are you getting off of her, if anything?
In general or in this situation?
In this situation. Whatever, both. You can go off.
I mean, I feel like it's both. I mean, I agree with you. Last season, I definitely felt what I perceived as that part of her, the sort of popular mean girl. I think that's a part of her for sure. And I think there's something really vulnerable that's happened for her last season. I'm not saying she handled it perfectly because she didn't. And I think there's something really vulnerable happening for her this season. And it's hard. I mean, it's interesting because I'm seeing people, at least in terms of my echo chamber, it seems like people are very heated towards Crystal. I'm having a different experience where I actually feel really bad for her. I feel like she's struggling to articulate something that is vulnerable for her. She's not doing it well. And she's in this group that for whatever reason, I agree with her. They get more concerned about like word choice than they do with the fact that there's someone here who's struggling with something. And their response to it, when it doesn't come in the right way or in the way that they can hold it, is to try to shut it down and tell her why she's wrong. And so I feel bad for her because I feel like what she's trying to do initially this season is say, there was something that was unheard and unseen, or at least I feel that way. And I feel like I got told that my feelings were wrong. And I'm trying to bring this out, but that's vulnerable for me. And she's now in a situation where it's happening again.
Mm.
And I think that's part of why she's now doing this cloak and dagger dance, because I think she knows on some level she kind of fumbled the ball.
Oh.
In the place where there wasn't a lot of room or grace for her. And I want to talk about Garcelle's role in this in a minute, but, I think she fumbled the ball, but I think there's something in her now that's so fiercely protective, because she knows that there's something vulnerable here. And she knows on some level she has a right to it. And she knows that this group is shutting her down. And so I think we're watching her dig her heels in, almost in a way that's healthy for her, in the sense that she's trying to protect her inner child, but isn't totally healthy, because now she's gotten herself backed into this corner, and she is, in her, her opaqueness with what happened. Again, it's clumsy, and she's doing something, and now she's doubling down on it. So she's not really doing herself any favors, but I feel for her, because there's something that's trying to come through, and it just feels like there's no room for it. And I feel like now, if she were to say, you know what, guys, it was just this one conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Everything's going to get thrown out, including what she was trying to say about last year. So I kind of feel something, Crystal, that's saying, I'm not letting this happen again. I'm not abandoning myself. I'm not doing it. I don't care what the F I have to say. Like, this is where her strong no is coming in.
Wait, hold on. You're saying that if she does agree, that if she does admit that it was just this conversation, then not only is she giving up this moment, but she's also giving up the violate from last year.
Yeah. And like her experience of what happened with that, like they're going to throw all of it out, and she's holding on to it. Okay. And I think, part of what I want to say is, like, if I'm not saying too much right now, I think where Crystal went wrong last year, and I think the one tweak she needed to make that could have like sidestepped so much would just be to separate out Sutton's intention from the impact that it had. And, I think this is where your point about her high school mean girl comes into play. I think she was triggered by Sutton. And I think she had judgment about Sutton. And I think part of I talked about this on my podcast. I think part of what made her feel violated was getting caught, quote unquote, by someone like Sutton, who she has a kind of certain charge around. And so I think because of that, she's getting wires crossed between intention and impact. And I think if she could have just said, Sutton didn't do anything wrong, I know your intentions were good or okay, but this took me somewhere and I need support from this, then she could have gotten support. And where it went wrong was she kind of maybe wanted people to collude with her that Sutton was creepy, rather than this made me feel creepy.
Exactly. That is exactly, because what I'm interpreting the other women is trying to do is just say please on camera, so that we can so Sutton doesn't have to deal with the whole season of people, because the audience is, for the most part, going to take whatever we put on camera and be like, wow, Sutton violated Crystal, and run with it and leave comments and be crazy. Just please say on camera, like, she didn't mean to violate me, but I experienced it as a violation. Just say that one time.
Exactly. But I don't absolve the other women, because where they go with it, they get so charged. Yes. And so for me, watching this dinner where Crystal's kind of fighting for her right to have her feelings, I'm on her side. It's like, you can't tell her how to feel. And they're coming in so hot, Kyle, especially with her performative like empathy. And it's just, I agree with Crystal at the point of like, you guys are getting so hung up on this word I use. And again, I'm not saying I don't understand their concern, but it's almost like that's more important to them than taking in someone who's saying, hey, I'm struggling here. I'm doing this imperfectly. I need help and support around this. It's like they don't care about that.
They won't give her any space. Exactly. So my friend said it interesting. She said, I think that because Crystal is so worried that they're not going to receive her feelings, she gets defensive and closes down and gets, stubborn about it. And that makes sense to me, because I can kind of relate to that. I don't shut down when I feel like my feelings aren't going to be received well. I get angry. So I start to communicate and get mad. And so no one wants to receive information when they're being yelled at. And so then it takes me like getting mad and being upset, and then later calming down and saying, so what I was trying to say. And they're like, well, why didn't you just say that? I'm like, because I didn't think you'd hear me. And so it's like Crystal isn't able to communicate because they're now like yelling at her. So she's like, okay, so my fears are coming true. You guys aren't hearing me.
Exactly. And I feel like this whole thing recreated. So that's why I'm saying it's this weird double vibe, because here she is trying to speak up to that again, trying to create space for her feelings that she didn't get in the first place. And now it's happening all over again. I mean, Dorit was literally yelling at her in La Quinta, you know, and so Crystal's saying, okay, this isn't a safe space for me. And so then I want to bring in that, I mean, and this is complicated, and I want to acknowledge, obviously, like I'm a white person talking about this, and this is two women of color. I just want to say, though, it's like Garcelle, here is Crystal, who they've invited over. The women have a moment the next morning where they're like, okay, we do see she's upset. Let's give her some space, which they've never done this before. They go in, and I want to say, same thing happened to Garcelle last season. And I was on Garcelle's side with that too. When they were going, like, there's a way that this group doesn't like to tolerate feelings that make them uncomfortable. And actually, when Crystal said that in La Quinta, where I forget exactly what she said, but she named it. She was like, you guys only want to validate feelings that you basically understand. And Lisa Rinna's face when she said that, it was like her operating system broke. Like she didn't know, like wires started popping out of her head. She did not know how to handle that. I thought Crystal was naming something really important. So I want to say, yes, I think that's true. And so then Garcelle comes in with, well, actually, that thing that happened last year wasn't like basically, to my perspective, minimizing it and saying you set Sutton up to be, quote unquote, that girl, which, you know, again, is there truth in the sense that Crystal, like whatever, had her judgments and issues with Sutton? Yes. Did Crystal do anything to like bear responsibility for that particular conversation? Absolutely not. We all saw it with our own two eyes. It was hugely embarrassing. You know, Sutton has apologized for it. Like there's no question about what happened. So for Garcelle to bring that in, especially in a moment where this was supposed to be about Crystal saying something and having space for her feelings, I guess I would just say this. If I were there, I would really want to ask Garcelle, like, what is your intention in bringing this up right now? Because, and I feel like this keeps getting lost. I mean, people will say, well, yeah, like Garcelle kind of started it, but I'm like, no. Let's slow this down. And I think that's why I'm having trouble jumping on the bandwagon of people being angry at Crystal, because I'm just like, something really happened there that is not getting fully addressed. And now we have a dinner where Sutton's proclaiming, I did nothing wrong that night. Now, maybe she didn't say anything that qualifies as Crystal's definition of dark, but no, you did do something wrong that night. And now you're suddenly playing the victim. Like there's something about this whole thing that's making me personally uncomfortable. And it's why I'm kind of on Crystal's side with a lot of this.
I can see that because Garcelle called Crystal and convinced Crystal to come over.
Oh, she was the one who called her.
Yeah. She's like, come over. Let's just work it out. Convinces her to come over. Right away, Crystal is very vulnerable. She cries. She talks about it. She lets them know what's going on. She says she's working on believing that this is a safe space for her feelings. Kyle says, well, just do me a favor. Don't wait a year to tell us how you feel. And I blame because Garcelle was admittedly tipsy. She's like, I'm tipsy. And I blame the alcohol because when Kyle said, don't wait a year, Garcelle went, well, now that we're mentioning it, this feels like a great time to tell Crystal. I'm like, what the? It's the worst time. She's like in the lion's den. You've convinced her to come over. So I completely understood Crystal reacting that way and feeling the need to say something big in the moment.
Yeah.
Because it was a jarring, scary situation. I was disappointed in Garcelle because then she never seemed to own up to the fact that she's like, I kind of put her in a tricky situation because I did she just told us about her feelings. And then I was like, hey, you set Sutton up. Like, she's not owning that was probably a very jarring thing. Instead, she's jumping right on like, well, watch your back with your friend, Sutton. I'm like,
Yeah, I mean, she's going in hard. She's going in hard. And I mean, I think it's interesting because, again, as you know, I look at everything from pattern. So with Crystal, I just look at, wow, look at this bind she keeps finding herself in around trying to be heard and validated in her feelings. And I just, again, if I were working with her, I have to imagine this is a very familiar feeling for her and that this kind of stems from her history. And she's caught in some sort of push-pull where it's like, yeah, she doesn't know how to slow down, perhaps long enough to separate out, what we're talking about, like meaning how to separate out what's coming in and then where it's taking her emotionally. So then, like I said, she maybe fumbles the ball and then that gets used against her. I just have to imagine this is history, family of origin history, or like, peer history. This is not new for Crystal. I think she's in sort of the larger than life version of her kind of life narrative. And it's tough because, like I said, it feels like such a simple tweak, actually. Mm-hmm. She's right there. Like, she's so good at naming things. She's really smart. There's an emotional intelligence to her, but there's just a place where the wires are getting crossed. And again, it's the place, I don't love, it's not like I'm like Crystal's biggest fan, but in this struggle, I feel for her. And it touches my heart because I just feel how vulnerable this is for her. And I feel the double standards, the group, because it's like Kyle can sit there and say, oh, you got to be careful about the words you use. What you're doing is dangerous. And I'm kind of like, well, dangerous is a word. And is not what Garcelle did in La Quinta dangerous? It's like, why are you guys allowed to say this to Crystal, but she's not allowed to say it to you? There's just something that there's an intensity that comes in this group. And then even you saying that Kyle was saying, well, in the future, don't wait a year. And I'm sure you heard me. I was like, fuck off, Kyle. It's like, Kyle, don't tell her how to be in her product. What if she wants to wait a year? Like, why do people have to be on Kyle Richards' schedule? I get it, Kyle. You are uncomfortable with things not being resolved. I get that you're uncomfortable with there being space to hang out in. That doesn't mean everyone has to be on your timeline of like, we fix it and get it done, which, by the way, feels a little codependent to me.
Tracks.
Exactly. So it's just, I don't know. I mean, I'm getting charged up now. It's hard for me to watch what's happening with Crystal. Like I said, much like it was hard for me last season to watch them do it to Garcelle, when they were in wherever they were, where did they go? They went to a hotel somewhere down in Orange County.
Yeah.
Or San Diego or something. La Jolla.
Like that. Yeah. La Jolla. I think, whatever. Yeah. San Diego, something like that. Beachy. With Erika, what's happening? What are you picking up on with her? Again, loving it. Okay, so let me just say what I'm feeling from her. And I like the idea that she just is, because when you're going to lie, you have to really believe the lie. You got to really convince yourself it's real. So I just feel like she's been living this persona, this fake world for so long that she's like, no, this is my life. This is real. And she's just got to write it out. And it's almost like she's in such a fake reality, but it's a reality for her. And so she really does feel like a victim. Like she is a victim. Like she's like, I mean, the number one victim in this whole thing is Erika.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. I think she feels deeply misunderstood. And I think she feels victimized as a result. I mean, look, there's so much to say. I think that her investment in wealth, fame, I think to her that was a power play. It was a sense, there was a fuck you to the world. And like, see, this is what I can do. And I think to have that upended, I think for her, it's humiliating. I think it's deeply humiliating. And so, a lot of people have always asked, like, why is she not more compassionate? Why is she not more humble? I mean, I think there is always that thing of, I'm sure she can't really talk about it, because she's in legal stuff. But I've always just felt for her, and I feel the same way about Jen Shah. It's like, if I kind of show that this is, it's almost like equating, if I let myself feel what's happened here, and if I let myself feel what's happened to these victims, And if I sort of drop into that level of like compassion and that level of like humanity, I think it then takes her to the powerlessness that she's been avoiding. Like, I think for her, it feels like admitting defeat. People are then going to see her down. It's like they win somehow. And she's just trying to keep her chin up. It's just this voice. It's like, I'm not going to let you see me down. Like, all the people out there who I perceive want to see me fail, you're not getting it. I'm going to keep posting on Instagram. I'm not acknowledging this, and then she gets turned into this pariah by everyone because they're everyone like, you're a cold-hearted bitch. And I think for her, that makes her feel like she's the misunderstood one because, she's just trying. I think Erika always just feels like she's trying to survive. I mean, I think that was a large part of the marriage to Tom. It's like she's just out here trying to do what she's got to do. And, then she gets kind of crucified for it in her mind. So I think a lot of it's just, on a fundamental level, like it just feels like a power play. And it's like, I'm not going to let you see me weak. I'm not going to let you see me down. I'm not giving in. I'm not giving them what they want. You tell me I'm supposed to go do this. I'm not doing it.
She looks like when she was talking to Dorit, they had lunch, and then Dorit's like, oh, Diana's going to let us use her private jet. Erika was like, oh, because I used to have one. I was like, oh, God. She's constantly having to talk about like, I used to just buy a new outfit for everything. So now I have to wear things more than once. Like, oh, God, I feel like Erika would be like homeless and still acting like she's got a whole wardrobe. Like she really, like, her personality was based on her wealth. And it's very clear now.
I know. It's like when you say that, it really just reminds me. It feels like she's just so stripped down. Like she's like a fetus. You know what I mean? It's like, who is she now? She's naked.
Yeah.
What is there for her now? How does she define herself? What does she identify with? Who is she? I mean, it's very deep because I mean, absolutely. Like, that's how she was defining her identity. I think everything was invested in that. So you take away those false idols and it's like, what's left, especially, and this is what I'm trying to articulate, when you think about that, she was invested in those false idols originally because she didn't have a fundamental trust in her own heart, her own vulnerability, her own humility, like her own humanity, essentially. That has let her down in the past. That gets equated with, yes, being susceptible to whatever, like incoming attack, being hurt, being used. So she doesn't have trust in that. So I don't have the stuff anymore. I don't have trust in my own humanity. What am I left with? I mean, thank God she has the show to hide in.
She really doesn't. She didn't really have a lot of friends. Like when we saw her parties, it was like her dancers were the ones that were making up the bulk of the guests. So she kind of like surrounded herself with people she paid for too. Like it wasn't a lot of like personal close friends. Like Yolanda was her friend, but we've only ever met Mikey, her assistant, and dancers. And so now she can't really like pay for her friends anymore. So her world is destroyed at this point. So to appear weak, not going to happen. So I'm appreciating her holding on for dear life to her sanity at this point.
Yeah, we'll see where this goes. I'm just so curious to see what's going to happen with the lawsuits and everything. I'm just so curious to see. Yeah, I'm so curious to see how her story plays out and what ends up happening with her in life.
Because come the reunion, because this latest motion, about the latest motion by the Edelson, who's the lawyer that's been representing the Lion Air victims who didn't get their money. He filed this motion that's basically, it's like, no. This law firm was like a criminal enterprise, and they used Erika as like their front man, kind of like their PR person, because it's sort of like if the wife of the head of the law firm is all decked out and looking fly, you're going to keep getting more clients. And so they're alleging that Erika was absolutely like the front woman for this criminal enterprise. Like it happened after they wrapped filming, like right after they wrapped filming. So it won't be till the reunion that it can even be brought up. But so by the time the reunion comes, I'm just so curious to see what state she is in.
Well, the thing is, I mean, I feel like I'm saying it in a glib way, but I actually mean it. I mean, I don't think she's mentally well. I mean, I've been saying this last season, and so when we have those moments where she's literally trying to front, there was that headline, right? Where they basically dropped a suit against her to refile it in California, but they dropped it in Chicago, and she's literally trying to use that on camera as evidence that she's been exonerated. And it's, when I look at that, I'm like, you're having a mental break. Like, you're not in reality at this point. So I'm concerned for her.
Jamie, I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm actually because not only did she use it, very recently, Rinna tried to use it. She posted it in her stories and said, funny how they didn't pick this one up. And I very quickly reposted to my feed and said, no. Okay. I cannot believe she's reposting this. They tried. Kyle tried posting it too in her stories back when it happened. It's not like, I feel like they paid Us Weekly to literally write that headline. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. I remember when it got posted that day, it was like the most confusing thing for the content creator community, because you were like, wait, so she's exonerated? Like, what? It was just being refiled, and they literally had to drop it in Chicago so that they could file it in California. Notice they didn't talk about how it was refiled in California. They didn't post any of that. Thank you for bringing that up. I just need everyone to know that if you see that headline, it is not a headline.
It's just so weird because for me, because you mentioned even Kyle posted it, and it's, if I'm on a TV show and I have cast members, I don't know, just personally, I'm not reposting things for the sake of good PR. There's just this whole game that they all play. I mean, I guess I get it, right? They're in the public eye. The media is a part of it, but it's so, the level of artifice is just so stark. It's also meaningless, and yet they have this investment in it. So I don't know. Okay, what were you going to say?
Oh, no, what were you going to say?
Well, can we talk about Sutton?
I was going to bring up Sutton.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just find her incredibly unlikable, and I'm mystified by this trend of standing Sutton, I guess because she's the only person in the group who talks back to Erika Jayne, like that's it. But I just watched this woman. I mean, there's so much I could say about her self-involvement, about everything becomes about her. She's constantly bringing everything down. She's actually quite mean and cruel at times. And people seem to love her. And I guess it came up in my mind because I was thinking about the women who kind of co-sign Erika's weird PR stunts. And then I was thinking about, well, who doesn't? Then I was like, well, Sutton doesn't. And then that made me think of Sutton. And then I'm like, but I dislike Sutton so much.
I agree. I've said it many times. Like I don't really like defending Sutton in situations, but when it's like a situation where I could be like, okay, look, I see her point here. But I just even posted a clip from the podcast where Sutton then says something and I'm like, Sutton, shut up. Like so when Crystal went on Watch What Happens Live, they played one of the games they played. And I think it was like, who's the biggest social climber or something like that, or who's the most power hungry, some version of that. And Crystal said, Sutton. Now, I think Rinna has also said this, but the problem is Rinna's like the worst, she's an unreliable source. So you don't really validate anything that Rinna has to say, but Sutton, like, I get that it was an iconic moment when she said, like, sorry, I didn't have a gun to my head. I get that became like an instant quote that was funny, but did you read that whole bit that she was saying she was traumatized from her childhood and that's why did you find that to be authentic? Because I still struggle with whether or not that was authentic.
Okay, I'm glad you're asking this. So for anyone who listens to my podcast knows, I kind of have like a cohort who's with me on a lot of episodes, Piper, who's very intuitive herself. I specifically went to Piper. I was like, we need a phone call because I was like, what are you getting off this? Because I agree. When that first happened, yeah, I was sort of in your camp where I was like, I'm not feeling trauma in this at all. Like I felt competition, I felt jealousy, I felt resentment. And just by contrast, like last season, before Crystal was talking about anything to do with an eating disorder, when that coat thing happened, right off the bat, I was like, oh, I could feel it. I was like, Crystal's in something, so it's like, I'm just sort of saying that, like, I will pick up on that stuff, but I didn't immediately pick up on it with Sutton. So I talked to Piper about it, and Piper said that so basically she landed is that I think on the conscious level, for me, my belief is that it was coming from a more petty place of like resenting Dorit, resenting the attention, resenting, kind of feeling like, oh, now Dorit's going to be the focal point of the drama. Now, having said that,
okay,
is it possible that that level of self-centeredness is rooted in her trauma? Yes. And so once Piper helped me to frame it that way, I was like, okay, I can buy this now. Mm-hmm. But I think there were a few stops along the way. And I'll say, I guess maybe even in Sutton's defense, I'm not sure the degree to which that's what Piper was saying. I'm not sure the degree to which she's truly connected to the impact of her own trauma.
Yep.
So I think there's even a way when she talks about it, and she might even be using it in a manipulative way, but that still doesn't mean it's not coming from the trauma. It's sort of like it's like Inception, it's like a snake eating its own tail.
That's kind of how I read it. I initially read it like she was using the trauma in a very convenient way. But I got read for filth for even suggesting that.
I don't think there's not necessarily a lack of truth in that, but right. I think you could still, in a way, attribute that to the trauma.
Yeah. Because like you said, it's like if she's not consciously aware of it, it's like, okay, fine. In a kind of long road to get their way, sure. But there was a deleted scene. You know how they do the never before scene? They released that episode where they show like a couple deleted scenes from the prior week. And in that, the same scene with Kyle and Sutton, where Kyle's like, okay, can we talk about how weird you were when the whole Dorit thing happened and you were like, oh my God, my designer can't get in and blah, blah, blah. There was a bit from that scene, and Sutton says to Kyle, well, how do you think I felt? All three of you were going over to Dorit's and didn't even call me and tell me and invite me. You're talking about like right after, like when the news broke, they all went over there, and she's like, and Kyle's like, what are you talking about? We didn't call each other. We all just like went over there instinctively. Like we went over there. It wasn't like a dinner. It wasn't like a birthday party. It was like, and Sutton was like, well, and so I could buy the like kind of jealousy, like feeling left out. Like, well, I would have gone because it became a photo op too. Like paparazzi got their pictures, and so it was an odd thing to add to why she was upset and felt weird after it happened.
I mean, wait, hold on. Excuse me. I kind of felt too like there was maybe something in there about Dorit, like her relationship to Dorit, which I don't know. Like I haven't really clocked the two of them historically, but I just kind of felt this flavor of, now Dorit, like Dorit gets the attention. Now I have to like humor Dorit. I have to be serious about like she doesn't take Dorit seriously in some way. Yeah. And now it's like, have you ever been in a situation like that where there's someone you don't like, and maybe they're even someone who like feeds off drama, but then something happens where it's like you feel like you have to indulge it. That's kind of like what it felt like to me. Like, oh God, like now I gotta fucking play the game with Dorit. And almost maybe a little bit of like, and I've got my own stuff going on. I've got my plan for what we're doing this season.
Yes.
That's just what it felt like.
It's what it felt like to me too. She's like, the plan, this scene was supposed to be me coming over to talk about the party I'm throwing at my store, not to talk about Dorit's robbery.
But the thing is, Sutton has a history of being very self-involved, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so like, I mean, just even going back to, you know, whatever, like Rinna's daughter's event and she starts crying because someone's there, or, you know, the Lake Tahoe trip where Kathy's playing a practical joke and she's crying and making it about her. And then, I mean, look, the white fragility conversation where she can't listen to Crystal because it's about her. And let's be clear. I mean, even with the Erika Jayne stuff that people love her for, her initial response was my reputation. How is this going to affect me? I'm not faulting her for that in that situation, but there's a pattern with her. She really makes things about herself. I will say there is, as I say it, there is something that does feel kind of emotionally stunted about her. So that's kind of why I do buy that. Like, you could say this does have its roots in trauma. Like, there's something that feels very emotionally stunted in her. But it's like, when I look at this stuff about how self-involved she is, about how often she makes things about herself. And then the other thing I'll say that no one's talking about was that moment in the kitchen with Kyle, where she started really cruelly talking about Erika as the gold digger. I just was like, I get you don't like her. I get you're mad. This is mean. Like, you don't get to claim the high road anymore. Like, you're down in the dirt with Erika. So any kind of moral righteousness you may have had is gone. And I think it says something about her when she's mad. She's cruel and she's mean. And I think I look at all this and then I think, has there been a single moment on the show where she's just been kind or like genuinely nice in a way that somehow, crying about the birthday gift at Garcelle's birthday party. It's just, it's constantly all about Sutton.
Remind me of the birthday gift. I forgot.
It's the leather pants.
Oh, yeah.
Your ugly leather pants. Garcelle was getting birthday gifts. Sutton starts crying because she was left out, you know?
Yep.
It's always about Sutton all the time. And like I said, I can't think of a single moment where she just seemed genuinely concerned for someone else, genuinely kind for the sake of being kind.
These are all great points.
I don't know why people like her so much.
I'm right. I kind of feel like I get that, you know, what's the phrase? Like, a friend of my enemies is a friend of mine, or whatever the phrase is. So I get why last season we liked Sutton, because we were so mad at Erika and like it didn't seem like anyone else was standing up to her. So I get why the fandom went that way. I think Sutton was enjoying the feedback from fans because it was like, get her Sutton, about Erika. So I feel like that's why she's thinking she should, like, because I thought that whole thing about the gold digger comment was like unnecessary.
Totally unnecessary.
What are we doing? It's like, now you seem like you're playing in the dirt.
Yeah. And then that recent comment that everyone loves this. And I get it from a perspective of if you're just looking at them as TV characters, but you know, I'm looking at this, no, you're human beings, you have real relationships. But that post she made about Erika being neighbors with Armie Hammer, the guy who eats people. I'm just like, Sutton, this is just, you're fanning the flames. You're getting low. This is dumb. You're making yourself look bad. And, you know, I think to your point, honestly, I think if Erika hadn't had going on what she's got going on these last few seasons, I wonder how much people would be liking Sutton.
Well, yeah. And the problem, too, is if anyone retaliates, if anyone responds, it seems like no one acknowledges what she did first. So it's like, I can't believe Rinna would say that, because if someone responds to Sutton, like if Rinna does or if Erika does, it's like people are up in arms that they would say anything. I'm like, but she literally started it. So Sutton can't take it. She can dish it, but she can't take it. I don't mind a back and forth if you can handle it, but Sutton always acts like she's so hurt and wronged. I'm like, well, girl, you're the one starting the fire. So
yeah, I'll be curious to see what happens with her. I mean, I don't know how long Erika's legal troubles are going to go on for. I'd be very curious to see what happens with her once she no longer has that as her tentpole dramatically.
Okay, last point of our sesh. Dorit. I have to say, I shouted you out. You know I did. It was when, my listeners know this, it was when Dorit they were down at Kyle's looking into place, and Dorit just had as her look the little headband And I was like, okay, wait, this might be real. Because Dorit would always be in a full glam look. And here she is putting on a headband and Kyle's clothes. I feel like maybe she totally did experience this as a real thing, but she's just so disconnected from reality that her version of experiencing it is just bizarre. And I'm not connecting to it because that's Dorit. Dorit isn't someone I would normally connect with. Her process is strange. So I went back and I reread your post and it was like, okay, yeah, Dorit is just handling this like Dorit would handle this, like over dramatic. And I wasn't connecting to her at all. But then that also made sense. Okay, so can you just talk to me about what you're getting off of it? I don't want to get myself in any more trouble than I already am.
I think she's still in shock, to be honest. That's sort of what I get. I think that she's trying to race through recovery. Even just, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it's great she's getting therapy, but I just, the vibe I get off it from the limited info I get off this edited TV show is kind of like, I think she's trying to fast forward to getting back to normal, and which feels very Dorit to me. I mean, it feels very type A, rigid, like I want to do this right. I just want to get to the other side. Because to my original point that you're referencing, yeah, I think that dropping in to something that's raw and real is very difficult for her. I think obviously this situation would be difficult for anyone. But I think for her, because I've been experiencing her as becoming more and more shut down over time, even before this happened. The Dorit, it's interesting. If you go back, the Dorit who first came on the scene, I think energetically, it's very different than the Dorit we have today.
100%.
She felt so much more alive and in her body. She felt like she had so much more fire and spunk on that first season. And it's like now she sort of totters around in these designer outfits, just feels like completely cut off from her body. So I think that she's someone who tends to split anyway. And so to be in a situation, I mean, it's weird. I'm always looking for the deeper invitation of things, like as someone who walks a spiritual path. So I almost might say if Dorit were someone who believed in that and wanted to know, like, why would something like this happen? Or what should I be getting out of this? I'd almost say there's almost an invitation there for her to like maybe connect more deeply to feelings and to connect more deeply to unprocessed trauma that predates this situation. But having said that, yeah, I feel like what I'm watching is someone who's like kind of trying to manage the experience. And I wonder if there's a point coming where she's going to hit a wall. I mean, maybe not on camera, but whether it's on camera or off, where she's going to hit a wall and kind of like need to take a time out, because it just seems like she's been on the go since this whole thing started.
I think they even they did a couple interviews where they said about midway through the season, it starts to hit her and then she crumbles.
That's what it feels like to me. It feels like she's trying. It's like, everything's fine. I'm doing all the things, checking all the boxes, getting all the therapy. Don't worry about me. I'm going to Mexico. Like, it just feels, like she's trying to manage the situation. And look how good she is at making it look good. And I don't mean that in a judgmental way in terms of how she's handling this trauma. I mean that in terms of its information about Dorit. You know what I mean? Just in general. She knows how to, she's a smart woman. She knows how to tick all the boxes and make things look good.
She really has, like, you're right. From the Dorit that came on the show, even just physical transformation.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you did, like when I look back at her first season, she's physically changed into, I mean, I'm not saying this in an insulting way, it just is a fact. She kind of did like the Kardashian facial makeover. Like they literally, like, plastic surgeons talk about it. It is like a fact. People like bring in pictures of the Kardashians and it's kind of like the lips, the nose, the filler in the cheek. It's kind of like, it's a formulaic thing. And it's all about just designer looks. I kind of blame Erika for bringing the glam and just like all about looks to the show. She's the one who did that. She's the one who came on and it made everyone feel like they had to do it because Rinna never used to do it. Dorit didn't used to do it. Erika was the one who brought that. And they're so competitive that they're like, well, I have to do that too. So I blame her for that, among other things.
Yeah, the show, this Beverly Hills is definitely one of the most interesting franchises to me, just energetically, when you kind of look at the entirety of its narrative run and just where it started, where it felt so much more raw and real. And then it kind of pivoted with the inclusion of Rinna and Erika and Dorit. You kind of started getting this force of very just controlled, performative, what it looks like on the outside. Denise Richards was kind of a part of that too, I felt. And now we're and I felt we were in a drought for several seasons. And now we're kind of in this new place with, I don't even know how to characterize this current cast. It's such a pastiche. It's got diversity now, even just in terms of culture with like Sutton and her Southern roots. You've still got the Erika and the Dorit and the Rinna. I mean, Garcelle she's just so interesting in terms of what she brings. It's so complex, so I don't even know how to characterize this show anymore, but I mean, it seems to be working. I think what I'm drawn to most in the show now is what I spoke to before of like the way, because now there is this opposing force to the core Fox Force 5. But then what happens in response is this energy that comes in that's like, we're shutting you down. So again, like feeling it towards Garcelle last season, now we're feeling it towards Crystal, but now like Garcelle is part of it. It's just so interesting. It's like something vulnerable wants to emerge. And then it's like whack-a-mole. Something comes in that's like, no. Like, we're not tolerating this. Like, bye.
Yeah.
Whack.
If they don't understand it, Crystal said it perfectly when she was in La Quinta. You guys will shut down something if you don't understand it. So
in a way where it's like, it feels to them like Kyle is, I keep coming back to Kyle as the ringleader. It's like, it threatens her. Like it threatens her. I can't manage this. Yeah.
Kyle is very paranoid because she's been on the show so long and she knows how like the editing will work. So there was, it was 2 seasons ago. It's when they went after Denise with the whole Brandy thing. At the start of this season, Kyle was coming off as the villain. She was yelling at everyone, and Erika had a problem with her. Dorit had a problem with her, and she started to get panicky and squirrely. And then Denise said something to her, and like something switched, and Kyle was like, "I'm calling Rinna, and we are going after Denise." Like, forget it. Like, she knows how it can play out on camera. So she gets panicked really easily because she's paranoid. She's a paranoid, anxious person. So like, she is always going to shut things down. Like, we're not going to play this because then and it's Kyle's fault. She does it to herself. But like, yeah, Kyle is the ringleader of the paranoia and the shutting things down and all of that.
But then meanwhile, talking about like, again, don't get me wrong. It's not that I love Sutton's reaction, but her saying, where's your empathy meter? And I'm like, well, look at how you're treating Crystal right now. Where's your empathy meter? I mean, you've shown zero regard for her vulnerability.
Yeah.
You can't get out of your own way. That's the thing. It's like Crystal is right. The only thing Kyle cares about is you got to say the thing. Like got to like language it right. And it's like, Kyle, someone's struggling over here. Can you like get out of your own agenda for 1 fucking minute to take in someone who's struggling, Miss Empathy Meter?
Yeah, like at that lunch that she instead of saying, look, let me hear what you were trying to say, she was like, just take it back.
Yeah.
Just take it back right now.
And this is the other thing I want to say. This is kind of why I'm on Crystal's side. I think there's something kind of badass about Crystal just kind of being like, no. And I feel like Crystal is having a really strong boundary. And I feel like several times now, Crystal said, okay, I got it. It's done. I'm giving it up. And it's really Kyle and Garcelle who keep bringing it up, And so for me, I'm kind of like, Crystal's laid down a boundary. It's not her problem if you refuse to acknowledge it.
I'm going to disagree on that because what they're trying to do now is save Sutton from the cameras. They are trying simply to say, just give 1 moment on camera to say Sutton didn't say the N-word.
But if they're doing it, but the problem, it's like if this had just been dropped, at Sutton's event, we wouldn't be talking about it anymore. It's like I don't know. I just feel like Kyle keeps bringing it up. It's like Crystal saying, okay, I got it. We're done. So let's leave it at Sutton, the store.
Let me think about that. Would it be done? Would we be able to, would we as the audience be able to drop it? Think of it that way. Like, would people watching, not us aficionados, but the rest of the audience, you know what I mean? Because like, I have to remind myself of that too. Would the rest of the audience be able to let it go? Or would they continuously be commenting on any post Sutton does saying, what did you say? What did you say? Crystal said you said something dark. What did you say? Because that's what happens.
I guess here's the thing. And again, maybe this is my echo chamber from the beginning. I mean, there was no moment where I really saw the world at large being like, oh my God, Sutton did something. Like, it seemed pretty immediately as the women were questioning it, which was that very episode, the audience was questioning it. So to me, I kind of feel like if they left it at the store, I mean, maybe we'd be unsatisfied from a storytelling perspective. I didn't see people, tagging Andy being like, you got to fire Sutton.
Oh, I did. Like, maybe because
you did?
I got a lot of those.
Okay.
I had a lot of like, I bet Sutton said a whole bunch of racist shit. I bet they're protecting. So I got a lot of those comments. So
see, I didn't see that.
Yeah. So that makes sense now. So like I was getting a lot of that stuff and then people going back and forth in the comments and, it was pretty 50-50. I would say maybe more 60-40, 40% of the, thinking Sutton said something really racist and I wouldn't doubt it and blah, blah, blah. And then the 60% being like, no, she's overreacting. And so where I'm coming from is they're looking at it from like a producer standpoint of saying, just give us one little soundbite of you saying it's not as bad as you're making it in your head. But to me, I was really uncomfortable. Just say that one time so that the audience can get it and latch onto it and drop it.
Yeah, it's just so hard. Yeah, I mean, right. So this is the quandary Crystal's in because she doesn't want to give in.
Exactly. So like I think that's why, because both Kyle and Garcelle are really producing together this season. Like they're like buddy and like really driving narrative.
Yeah. And it's like, again, I just have to go back to the fact too. I mean, I almost, it's like, it's just for me, it's the hypocrisy though of Garcelle kind of did something. Yes. I mean, not similar, but she minimized something, that Crystal brought in related to the race conversation. But now Crystal's getting all this heat. Now, like when I hear you say people really were like assuming the words of Sutton, like, okay, I get it. That is damaging. And I understand the impulse to want to clear things up. It just feels unfortunate that it's coming in a very heated way that's all directed towards Crystal with no real acknowledgement or space for what got us there. I mean, again, it's asking a lot of the women. It's asking them to really kind of hold a nuanced big picture view of what's going on. That's not necessarily their strong suit, but I guess I'll just say this. I empathize with the situation Crystal's in. I understand why she's there. And it's frustrating for me to watch it play out. I wish that Garcelle would acknowledge what role she played more because she's acting like Crystal said this out of nowhere. Like, and Kyle is too. Kyle's like, why did you bring it up? I'm like, well, she was asked a question. Like, or not asked a question. She was prompted. Yeah. And that's the thing I keep thinking about too. It's like in a moment like that was in something that was so vulnerable for her. So it's like, I want to say like, Kyle, how would it be for you if someone was kind of poking you around like your sister or your relationship with your sisters? Like, how would it be for you, Garcelle, if someone, I don't know. It's like, this was a vulnerable thing for Crystal. And so I think that's just what feels so kind of, to use the word, dark.
It feels dark. And it's like no one's like when Kyle said that at Sutton's party, she's like, why did you bring it up in La Quinta? Or I know she said that. And then or maybe even Garcelle had the nerve to say, why did you bring it up in La Quinta? And then Crystal had to go, because, well, hi, don't you remember what you said? And I was like, Garcelle, I thought you were better than this. Like, this is just weird. It's all, but look, at the end of the day, they've already dropped this. Like all of this is resolved. They're all fine now. They're all friends in real time. So I don't know. Maybe we have maybe one more episode of this and then it's over. Thank God, because maybe they do have this conversation. Maybe this exact conversation we're having, they're eventually like, you know what? Garcelle's going to go, I did ask you a stupid. Maybe this exact conversation occurs and we can be like, thank God, because it just seems out of character for Garcelle because she's pretty good at going, I did do that. That wasn't cool. She's pretty good at owning up to stuff.
It's true. This is tough. Yeah. I mean, I want to say, and she also, I mean, we're seeing it big time this season. She also has a relationship to being the shit stirrer, you know, and she's got a provocative aspect of her. So that's why I just didn't know. That's why I'm curious about what her intention was. I mean, it's helpful for me to have you remind me that she was drinking and there was a context. And again, I don't feel totally comfortable speaking about it because I'm a white guy. This is a conversation about race. Garcelle obviously is a woman of color. It's like, I don't want to talk too much about it. There's no way to not talk about it if we're talking about this, but it's complicated, right?
Yeah.
But there are many threads here, I guess is just what I'll say. And I'd be curious to know more from Garcelle what was going on for her in that moment.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say.
That's what we'll say. All right. Well, I picked your brain. Okay. Any final thoughts before I take us out? I mean, you've said a lot.
No. Just, excited to see where it wants to go next.
Yeah.
Excited,
It's quite a journey. That trailer had so much in it, and we have yet to scratch the surface. So we've got a lot coming.
Kathy's not even here yet. We're not in Aspen yet.
Erika's going to yell at Crystal for defending the victims at one point.
Oh, yeah. I'm so ready for more of Erika's.
So ready for that. Next week, Garcelle's going to tell Crystal she's bugging her.
There was that moment in the trailer where Erika's like, is in some insane costume. And she says something so dramatic. Do you remember what it is? Where
in the trailer for the season?
Yeah, it's something about like, the women don't want secrets coming out or something like that.
Like, if we're going to talk about Erika's problems, are we going to talk about everyone's?
Oh my God. God.
She's so drunk in that moment too. I'm like, yes, I can't wait. All right.
This is what I'm living for.
Thank you for making the time to be here. Can you please tell everyone where to find you if they don't already know?
Well, definitely check out my podcast, Deep Dive with Jamie Stein. And actually, there's a whole episode dedicated to Erika where we went so deep into her. And then follow me on Instagram, Jamie Stein, JAMIESTEIN, where there's a lot of Bravo-related content. And if you're interested in my work, you can check out my website, hollywoodreadings.com.
And I will link everything in the description. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure.
All right, guys. Bye. See you next time.